So, Sony just confirmed it. Starting from January 2028, physical disc production for every new PlayStation game will stop completely. After that date, if you want to buy a new game, you are buying it either from PlayStation Store or a retailer, but in form of digital version. Games that already came out or have a release date before the January 2028 cutoff are not going to get affected. Nothing of this sort of thing can surprise me right now, because physical media in gaming has had a genuinely long run, to be very frank, and this was always going to be the eventual outcome. Let me take you back to some history of this disc version of video games. The idea of buying a game on disc actually traces back further than most people realize. In 1988, a Japanese company called NEC launched an add-on device called TurboGrafx CD. It was the first system built specifically to run games of a CD instead of a cartridge. Because before this, games lived on cartridges, if you could remember, which were expensive to manufacture and could only hold a small amount of data. NEC's move proved that a disc could store far larger amount of information in compared to the cartridge, so production cost will going to be low for the disc versions. A few years later, in 1994, Sony's original PlayStation took the same concept and turned it into an industry standard everyone followed. From that standpoint, for roughly 3 decades, the disc became the default gateway for people to buy their games, and especially the big budget titles from the major AAA studios. Now, this kind of phenomena we have actually experienced before. Music went from cassette tapes to CDs to now mostly living on Spotify and Apple Music. Movies went from VHS to DVD to Blu-ray, and now you can see the same thing on OTT platforms like Netflix and Hulu. In both cases, physical media didn't just disappear because people suddenly stopped loving the music or movies. That's not the case. It disappeared because streaming and downloading now it's more convenient with the OTT platform. And yes, companies realized there was more money and control in this particular model. Gaming is just following exactly the same roadmap. Now let's talk about the environment side, which is probably been skipped by many of you. This part really gets discussed. A 2019 study by the Studio Sports Interactive, which is kind of Sega's football management team, found that a single game case, just the plastic sleeve, contains around 55 grams of plastic. Multiply that by the hundreds of millions of physical game discs sold every year across the country, across the globe, and you are looking at thousands of tons of plastic just for the outer packaging. There's also a more recent study in 2025 which actually show you that if you use the plastic version of the disc, the physical version to be very frank, then it will cost you 312 tons, and that is huge number of CO2 equivalent. But when it comes to the digital version, you ship to it and you produce around of 3 tons of carbon emission, and so that's roughly 100 times more carbon output for the physical version. And in the mining for the raw materials, the manufacturing energy, the shipping across continents, and the packaging that mostly ends up in landfill within a few years, and it's a genuinely heavy footprint for something that mostly just sits on a shelf after the first install. That's right, 90% player never going to play the same game ever again. And on the top of it, if you could realize, those physical version of disc these days cannot even hold the full amount of game because the data size of the full game is humongous. This is maybe the strongest practical argument for going to digital. You know, a standard Blu-ray disc tops out around 100 GB, even its dual layer form. Mostly AAA games are coming out with 100 to 150 plus GBs. You include mandatory day one patch, and even a lot of indie games now sit around 20 to 60 GB range. So even if you buy a physical disc, you are still opening your console, connecting to the internet, and downloading a big chunk of data from the internet to play your actual game, which you actually supposed to play after paying the whole amount to the developer, right? At that point, the disc isn't really the game anymore. It's more like a physical key that unlocks a mostly digital product. If you need the internet anyway, the disc starts to feel more like a formality than a necessity. there is an argument going on. People say often, ki, do you even own those particular thing even after you pay this, specifically those particular video games? Well, see, this is the part of people get genuinely upset about, and fairly so. When you buy a digital game, you are not buying a copy the way you would buy a book. You are buying a license to access it in particular, one that a company can technically restrict or revoke under any circumstances or given condition. This isn't just a gaming problem either. The same thing happens with any kind of digital product these days. If you buy a film through a platform, the platform loses its right and stop distributing it and simply shuts down your rights to legally watch this particular movie. So you can lose access, and through this you will be thinking like, okay, I have paid for the particular movies, now I don't have access, and you will shout in agony, right? So this concern got serious enough that California actually passed a law about it starting January 2025. A law called AB 2426 requires any company selling digital goods, games included, to clearly tell customers to check out they're buying a license, not a full ownership. Companies can no longer just use the word buy without that particular disclosure. So it's a small sign that lawmakers are starting to take the ownership question seriously, but it also confirms that the underlying issue is real and not just an internet gimmick. Now the piracy comes, right? A lot of frustrated customers turn to piracy as a workaround to this whole kind of facade, the ownership problem I'm talking about. But the two media types are not equally easy to pirate. With a movie, someone can technically screen record software like OBS and distribute the copy. With the games, it's much harder to crack any particular video game. Sometimes they have got some privacy protection, some license protection thing with the game like DRM. Now the question comes, interestingly, what is Xbox and Nintendo doing? Xbox seems to be moving into a similar direction already. There have been reports that Microsoft Gaming Division is testing a disc-to-digital feature that would let players convert their existing physical Xbox game collection into digital licenses. Combine that with the fact that most major Xbox exclusive now also releasing on PC, and Game Pass being a subscription that's really carrying the platform, and it looks like Xbox may follow Sony's lead sooner than later. Nintendo is the one is still holding on to physical cut, and in a meaningful way, of course, largely because their handheld first audience still values the tangible format. But given how every other major player is heading towards digital, it's likely just a matter of time before Nintendo eventually shifts to the same path. Now let's talk about the GTA 6 situation. Just days before Sony's announcement, Rockstar revealed that GTA 6 physical edition would only contain the code inside the physical box, so no disc at all from their side. So after this particular decision, fans were understandably so much upset, and some retailers repeatedly refused to stock a box that didn't contain an actual disc. Rockstar has hinted an actual disc version might come later, but nothing is confirmed as of now. I know how it feels like, to collect a video game disc. It's an emotional side, by the way. We all have it if we are gamers inside. Then there's something genuinely satisfying about, shelf up full game boxes and, collect it throughout the years. That nostalgia is kind of real, not something people are imagining. But collecting disc also comes and with real downsides most collectors quietly deal with. Discs get rotten, scratches, sometimes you feel like you have already paid for a full version of the game, but still the disc is unplayable. So that's a huge risk. So the shift to digital was never really a question of it. Just when Sony pulling the trigger for 2028 makes it official for PlayStation at least, and the rest of the industry will surely like to follow at their own pace. The ownership and licensing debate is a legitimate one, and it's good that it's finally getting real legal attention. But practically speaking, for most people, the convenience, the lower cost of production, and the fact that games have outgrown what a disc can even hold all point in one direction. So if collecting still means something to you, the second-hand and collectors market isn't going anywhere soon, but as a default way of buying and playing games going forward, digital has already won the battle.